Question, given the number of millionaires in the Senate, did you find it a bit audacious that 48 Senate Democrats voted to amend the Constitution to restrict political spending by other rich people, Mort Zuckerman?
No, I mean, why would that be a surprise coming from the Democratic Party? Because let's face it, the Republicans have access to many more people of wealth, by and large, than the Democrats do. So, of course, they're going to want to try and limit that source of funding.
Yeah, but that's a much bigger issue, what went on in the Senate a couple of weeks ago, and that's the Democracy for All constitutional amendment that would amend the Constitution to put some restrictions on money giving. You ask people out there why we can't raise the minimum wage, why we can't stop companies from from going ashore and denying the taxes they should be paying to the Treasury, why we can't get a lot of things done in Washington. It's because of special interest money lobbying and influencing lawmakers. And so because of the Supreme Court decisions, there is now some effort around trying to pass a constitutional amendment. It will take a long time, but you know, the influence of big money, a lot of it called dark money, because people don't even have to disclose who they are, is really, it's poisoning our democracy.
Yeah, speaking about dark money, do you have any of that, Mort?
Well, let me put it this way, John. To the best of my knowledge, I do not. But I have to confess that if I were in the Senate, you would probably have me on one of those lists, maybe the #1 person on the list.
Well, more
rich politician,
number one, you got more money than Rockefeller?
This Rockefeller, yes.
Well,
but this is the end of my commentary about.
Well, Mort does good things with his money, and there is a new book coming out. It's called Billionaires in Assessing their Political Influence. Mort is in the book. I approve of everything he does with his money. He supports a lot of health issues and so forth. So it's what you do with your money that makes a big difference.
You think that the rich can really understand the plight, P-L-I-G-H-T, of the lower classes?
Well, yes, I think some of them can, and some of them will not, because obviously they are living a different lifestyle, to put it mildly. But they also have a perspective on a lot of other issues, and one of the things being, for example, the fiscal health of the country. That's something which a lot of wealthy people have a real concern for, and it's something they're going to talk about. They also understand, if I may say so, what philanthropy means and how the community has to support a lot of the issues that we want to have resolved.
There's also this, and that's putting up buildings in the public good. You've got a new Zuckerman building going up. Is that completed yet?
Almost.
Almost?
Yes.
Hey, John, one thing about big money.
I commend you on that. Issue 3, hold on. Sure. Spinning a web.
I decided that it was time to come back in and really rejoin the debate. We're in a transitional period in the country, and we need to have strong debate inside the Democratic Party and between the two parties on where the country needs to go.
Former U.S. Senator Jim Webb ignited speculation about a run for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination during a late August trip to Iowa. Senator Webb stumped 800 miles of the state, ostensibly on behalf of Democrats up for re-election in November. Senator Webb was non-committal when asked by a Radio Iowa interviewer whether he would run in 2016. Jim Webb is a decorated war hero receiving the Navy Cross for extraordinary heroism. He is opposed to interventionism in foreign policy. He has been selectively critical of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Jim Webb is not lacking in national security credentials, and he's also the author of 9 books. In addition to his 6 years in the U.S. Senate, Webb was Secretary of the Navy under President Ronald Reagan. After graduating from the Naval Academy at Annapolis, Webb fought as a Marine in the Vietnam War, where he earned 2 Bronze Stars and 2 Purple Hearts. His latest book, I Heard My Country Calling, is a memoir of his life growing up in an Air Force family and his subsequent military career.
Question, can Jim Webb give Hillary Clinton a run for her money if he gets in the race? Eleanor Clift, be brief, please.
I think Jim Webb is a fascinating individual. He considers himself an intellectual. If he gets in the race, there'll be some very high-minded conversations. But he left the Senate after 1 term because he can't stand the falderall of politics. I don't know that he would have the stomach for a campaign trail. But I'd welcome him in the debate. I think he could offer a lot.
He's a terrific guy, John. He really is. He's a war hero. He served the country well. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. I think it would be tremendously interesting to have him in there. And I think he's a good different voice inside the Democratic Party. He's a patriotic guy, but he's not a big interventionist in wars because he's seen an awful lot of it.
Well, he's been a Republican and a Democrat and probably an independent. I mean, he's not a down-the-line Democrat by any means.
I would say, as a conservative, I will probably not be voting for the Democratic candidate, but I think it would be a great thing for the country to have Jim Webb in there with Hillary Clinton. And quite frankly, I would much rather that he was on that primary campaign trail than Elizabeth Warren, because I think he brings a unique perspective to the Democratic Party, and everyone in the country could benefit from those exchanges.
Here's an interesting factoid. Wealthy politicians, are they more likely to favor the economic status quo? Do you care to address that?
No, I would say they aren't more likely to do that.
They are not?
No, not with the people that I know or have dealt with. They understand that we have to make a lot of changes in our current, particularly our fiscal policy and our tax policy, in order to get the economy of this country moving again and to do it in a sustainable way.
Yeah,
Well, it says here that there's a body of political science data that shows that ownership in a society makes one more wedded to the status quo, whether that ownership stake is middle class, home ownership, or a millionaire's wealth.
I don't think that applies to guys that go into politics. I do think that applies to a lot of people with wealth, but a lot of folks I know that go into politics with a lot of money want to change things.
That's right.
The dramatic figures and progressive cutting edge.
Let's push this out a little bit. There are no billionaires in either the House or the Senate, correct? You think you could correct that?
Okay. The silk stocking district must be open more.
I remember there have been efforts to draft you to run for mayor in the past in New York.
true.
If I remember
Speaking about
correctly.
mayor of New York, the only billionaire politician that I am aware of active on the scene today, still active,
Bloomberg?
is
Mike Bloomberg.
Mike Bloomberg.
Right.
He was a terrific mayor for
And
New
he's got
York.
about, what, $22 billion?
18 billion, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's this weekend.
Well, he gives a lot away.
He's
He's not giving it
unbelievably.
all away,
He's practically
He's
underwritten Johns Hopkins,
he's
am I
enormously
right?
philanthropic, okay? Not just Johns Hopkins. I first met him on a board of something, and he was phenomenal.
And he does a
in
lot of
terms-
work in Bermuda.
He does a lot of work everywhere he goes. He was a terrific mayor. He was there for 12 years as a mayor, and he really rebuilt the sense of the city and
is
its
he, 78
confidence
years
in New
old?
York. No, he's not. He's about
He's young.
73 or 74.
Why doesn't he run
For what?
Listen,
Run
he's
for what?
for president? He tried before, but it was kind of...
John, he couldn't
You
even be
can't-
able to carry
half-baked,
New York. He wouldn't be
half-baked.
able to carry New York City against the Democratic candidate.
And he's an independent now, so he.
Here's a question on a political probability scale from 0 to 100. 0 meaning no likelihood whatsoever, and 10 meaning metaphysical certitude. What is the likelihood that Webb will run for president? Pat Buchanan.
I'll put it at 1 and 3.
I'd put it at 4.
I put it at 5.
Well, I really want to continue the trend. I'll put it at 6.
I'll put it at 8 or 9. I saw that piece that he did
Yeah, right.
with those two women out in, I think it was Idaho or Iowa, and he was right on the money. Issue 4, Beyond the Rebound.
First, beginning with the number one thing that most Americans care about, the economy. This morning we found out that our economy actually grew at a stronger clip in the second quarter than we originally thought. Companies are investing, consumers are spending. Over the past 4.5 years, our businesses have now created nearly 10 million new jobs, so there are reasons to feel good about the direction we're headed.
We are now 5 years into the economic rebound from the recession of 2007 to 2009, but jubilation is premature. So says a new report from Harvard University's U.S. Competitiveness Project titled, An Economy Doing Half Its Job, unquote. The report's co-authors are Professor Jan Rifkin and Michael Porter, experts in business strategy and economic competitiveness. According to the study, which surveys the views of almost 2,000 Harvard Business School alumni in a range of occupations, U.S. corporations are now well positioned to compete internationally. Wages and incomes are stagnant, depressing the vital consumer spending the economy needs to thrive. The median household income is still 4.6% lower than it was in 2007, when the recession began. If the Harvard study is correct, things are going to get worse. 4 out of 10 survey respondents said wages and benefits for U.S. workers will drop even more over the next 3 years. Almost half said more businesses will outsource work to contractors instead of hiring new employees. The short-term result will be a two-tiered economy in which corporations and shareholders prosper while the middle class continues to decline. And that, say the study's co-authors, Professors Jan Rifkin and Michael Porter, is unsustainable in the long run. Quote, businesses should be taking the stagnation of living standards of the average American as the canary in their coal mine. Companies will not survive for the long run if their communities are stagnant. Unquote.
Question, who is right? President Obama, who says we should feel good about the economy, or Professors Porter and Rifkin, who say the economy is only doing half its job? What?
Well, I certainly agree with the professors on this matter, because in fact it's even worse than some of the things that they're suggesting, because a lot of the employment that we're talking about today is part-time employment, and part-time employment is treated by all the national statistics as if they were full-time employment. It is one of the weakest recoveries, maybe the weakest recovery we've had since the end of World War II, and it has, despite a huge stimulus both in monetary and fiscal policy, we have barely eked out growth. I mean, you're looking at 2.1% growth in GDP, which is well below what it should have been under the circumstances of this kind of stimulus. So we're nowhere near out of this downturn in the economy. It has not created the jobs we need at the wages we need.
When will we be at the downturn point?
As soon as you see a major increase in GDP that is extend for at least 2 years, that will run 3.5% or better.
Well, this isn't exactly news. We've been hearing about and reading a lot about the wealth gap, the income gap, the skills gap, and this was a survey of these well-placed Harvard graduates, business school graduates, and they pinpoint education is a problem, transportation infrastructure, job skills, and political dysfunction. I think they should step up a little and start lobbying some people on Capitol Hill, because government is not working to help this recovery
John,
move
I wrote
along.
a book a number of years ago, the 15, called The Great Betrayal. What has happened is American corporations have gone out into the global economy, and they're doing great competing, but they do well by getting rid of all these high-paid American workers, getting these factories out of the United States, getting away from the regulations, and they're dumping behind America, and they're going into the global economy. Globalization is what is killing the working folks of the Western world.
Speaking about global economy, can you shed light on that?
Yeah,
Tom?
I think globalization does a lot of good around the world. I think it's inevitable. You want to bring income levels up. It produces new opportunities in the United States. But at the same time, what Mort's talking about, in the fact that we have companies refusing to bring people on, whether it's because of Obamacare regulations or other taxes, the tax code is littered with complexities. So we see businesses moving abroad. The American economy is struggling because of structural issues that we are ignoring.
That's right. There's
Real
another
wages.
structure.
Well
There's
stated,
another
well stated, out of time. Predictions, Pat.
Rand Paul will be one of 3 finalists for the Republican nomination.
Helena.
Constitutional amendment to regulate campaign spending, campaign donations, will gain strength after the 2016 candidates each have to raise $1 billion.
Tom Rogan.
The next president of the United States will be a Republican.
Mort Zuckerman.
The next election year will still see the economy and jobs as the principal issue, because the weakness in both of those categories will continue until then.
All right, with 1 month to go before the November midterm elections, I predict that the Hispanic turnout will fail to reach the 31.2% level of 2010. This year, the turnout rate will not rise above 30% due to disillusionment with President Obama over his repeated postponement of immigration reform. Bye-bye.